Hello there, my peasants. You tuned into your favorite blogger speech. Today I'm trying to surprise you and hypnotize you a little. I'm going to pull some premium philosophical brainworms out of my sleeve. The one that spun around inside the head of medieval person and show you that medieval thinking was anything but primitive. Along the way we touch on the intellectual standoff between Christianity and Islam, between West and East. You know how it goes. As the man gets older, increasingly concrete, tangible things. Some egging military history YouTuber will happily argue for hours with his fellow about the exact diameter of the exhaust pipe on his below tank. Well, I've gotten older too, and I've gotten a little tired of the abstract question like, what is the meaning of being? So I decided to take a break, and I recommended that. I've always been drawn to the Middle Age, except my ideas about them were honestly pretty childish. Knights, the vassal of my vassal is not my vassal, stone castles, dynastic marriages, knights, jesters, mendicant orders, assassins, and templars. But all those vivid images look like a fantasy parody out of Monty Python, and the Middle Age were obviously inhabited by real people. They took their lives seriously. They perceived the world in the first person. It was decidedly not a fantasy parody. So what did they actually see when they look at the world around them? Through what lens did they look at it? I'll be talking first and foremost about the history of thoughts, about medieval intellectuals, the people who wrote texts, because they reflect exactly the reality I'm hunting for. Intellectuals have always written down a snapshot of the world they live in, and the intellectuals of the next generation analyze it and reconstruct it, which is in part that philosophy is. A few words about medieval studies. Medieval studies is the science that studies the medieval ages. And being a medievalist is terrifying. You have to cover 10 centuries of human lives. Is that even possible materially? It's even scarier. 10 centuries of darkness. Thousands of pages of unreadable folios. Seriously debating questions like, do fellows get dumber during a full moon? Did Christ's scars remain on his body after resurrections? Are floppy ears a sign of nobility or not? On top of that, back then, God wrote with the author's hand, and it was considered good manners to hide that author's name and publish the text anonymously or under a Latin pseudonym. For half of all medieval material, the author simply cannot be established, and archives are full of hundreds dreary multi-volume treatises written by ecclesiastical graphomaniacs that no one has even read. Maybe some student who misbehaved gets sent read one as punishment. The medieval ages are like a black hole. They do their own researchers. It's literally a dangerous topic, a psych attack. Let me quote Alain de Lebierre, whom I lean on a lot. Squeezed between antiquity and the classical age, medieval thoughts was treated as a warehouse of questions no longer asked. The Middle Ages are the old dusty wardrobe. Old toys are stored in it. 20, 30, 40 names. Aquinas, Averroes, Augustine. I could go on. They are all famous. We can observe individual actors. We can even say something about them, but we cannot understand the plot of the play. It may well be that all those people, Aquinas, Augustine, the ones I just named, weren't first-rate or great at all. Maybe they were second-tier thinkers retelling some else ideas, and we put them on the pedestal only because their text happened to survive well. They got scanned, reprinted again, Now students study them and professors teach them. They've been spawned into academic life, and Aquinas and Augustine are pillars, something taken for granted in medieval studies. So that the state of play in studying the medieval ages, and as you can tell, it's a murky business. And you will probably ask, what are you even doing here? Speech, you have some technical degree. Actual people are tearing their wens into the archive, and you what? Read a couple book of the topic? Well, here's the thing. While reading those texts, I keep fishing out of cool concepts and formulating them like a philosopher does, and I want to show them to you. If I am wrong about something, we can argue in the comments. First, remember that the West was born in the East, while peasants in the medieval Europe were eating manure. Medieval Arabs were thriving and building the Islamic Wakanda, the state of the future. It was Muslim who first picked up Aristotle, ran him thoughts themselves, and became a great civilization. Western people, meanwhile, at some point simply lost Aristotle, misplaced his books, shoved him into the background, forgot their own roots, and as a substitute they recently read Plato. Hence, all the fears and concepts like the world of ideas is the city of God. In general, the works of the ancient Greeks were treated at the time like the fragments of the long forgotten island civilization. You know, like a sci-fi story where Bedouins dig up the nanotechnology of the ancients and build themselves a blaster to kill the shaman of the rival tribe. And that's exactly where the big problem at the medieval ages come from. The unquestionable authority of the Greeks. If some ancient Greek once wrote something, even he basically just farted out of the page, it's this great knowledge of the ancestors. You cannot argue with it. Even then, the ancient Greeks is very obviously spouting completely nonsense, like Aristotle when he writes about the flying of the spear in his Physics. And the global project of medieval philosophy is really this. While Plato, Aristotle, and Jesus or Muhammad, depends on the country, into one big philosophical ecosystem, and because Plato and Jesus are fundamentally incompatible, a lot of blood was spilled. Theologians would show up the other theologians' doors with clubs and start a massacre. Back to the Muslim who discovered Aristotle, you might say silly Saracens. They just sat there, bending Aristotle to fit their Quran, claiming Aristotle prayed 5 times a day. No, there is not what happened. Averroism, the practice, running philosophy and theology as two separate, non-intersecting lines of thoughts, was forged precisely by Muslims. Only later did that division, that dichotomy, migrate into the Western world, along with Aristotle himself. The Muslims shared Aristotle with the Christians like crumbs from the master table. The Muslims have their own crises, their own witch hunts, and among other things, their own purely secular, analytic thinkers. Even in early medieval ages, there were doing predicate logic. This division into the secure and the theological was called the division between Kalam and falsafa. Kalam is the speculate theology, the science of God. Falsafa is the philosophy. Between Europe and the Caliphate, there raged a multidimensional culture war, waged of course by theologians and intellectuals. The Quran was first translated into Latin in the 12th century by Peter the Venerable, and this was done for anything but educational or a cultural purpose, because Saracen culture expansion was already perceived as the total threat. Muslims armed with Aristotle were casually dunking on Catholic theologians on their own tar, and the Catholic theologians couldn't answer because nobody knew Arabic. The Quran was translated into Latin for only one reason, so the scholastic could properly tear it apart in the theological dispute, and well, justify killing Muslim in the streets of the believing in the wrong God. The weapon of both sides were identical. Syllogism and proofs. In a word, the theologian reason enters the conflict of interpretation and, as it were, internalization. The violence, the Russian-French philosopher Koeve, sell us precisely this version of history, where the intellectual is first and the foremost, a state-funded brain burner. Same with translators and translations. We will encrypt our sacred text in 10 layers of conceptual Arabic calligraphy to hide it from the gaze of foreigner critics, while their texts we will translate and deconstruct so they have nothing left to die for. And you will say, who cares those theologians won a debate? What matters is who won in reality on the battlefield. Facts on the ground. Well, here we need to clarify the status of theology in the medieval world. At the University of Paris, people study for 25 years or more. That's entire lifetime. There were two faculties, the Faculty of Theology and the Faculty of Arts. The arts include physics, mathematics, literature, poetry, music, everything what doesn't concern God directly. Modern science, by the way, descends precisely from that Faculty of Arts. The graduate knew literally all the available knowledge of his era. Across all science, the man had an enormous swollen brain, and yet the Faculty of Theology always stood one rank above the Faculty of Arts. The Theologians is the highest calling, the final stage in the evolution of medieval intellectual. A theologian is not just another academic marinating on his own juice, not just some smart guy who pounds the world or runs experiments. No, the theologian is trying to thoughts, the whale and grab God by his beard. The theologian tells people the truth on which the fate of humanity depends, politics, and how people will build their world. Because the salvation of the soul is what matters most. Theology is the foundation of medieval thinking, the core, and the proof of God's existence is one of the theology's central topics. This is not an empty war of words. The proof of God is a formidable ideological weapon. The proof of God is the nuclear bomb of its era. The nation that rigorously, absolutely proved God would gain absolute ideological and moral superiority. If God is guaranteed proven, then martyrs and crusaders get a guaranteed paradise. Just picture it, some crusader sitting in the trench outside Jerusalem, praying, please, let our Oppenheimer finish first, let our theology get there before they do, or the Allah we prove will hurt our soul into the fire when we'll die. Those boys in armor, young, nameless, march to their death because they believe in the world beyond, and the world spoken from pulpit find their continuation in the burned down cities. But who are those people? What they see? What world they live in? What virus connect their minds and soul to the great Leviathan of the church? Let's zoom the camera in, crank up the temperature, and look at their world through the eyes of an ordinary medieval person. In the 21st century, humans are individuals, loners. We will be tossed out of the surface of a stone ball. Our planet, with the terrifying emptiness of space hanging over us. We were unprotected. We want to curl up and find shelter. We are standing on the outside of a shape, and we want to burrow down into the earth, into the subways. The medieval man did not live on the surface of a ball, he lived on a firmament, a flat firmament, and the firmament was wrapped in celestial shapes. The sky sheltered him like a dome, Above his head was intricate system of divine gears, its shape turning in its own way, each one close to God. Man is protected from above, he is wrapped in a divine blanket, and the sky above him is like a normal murky porthole. He can peek into it, like peering toads and keyhole into a steam-up room where you cannot see much, but you can make out silhouette, and look into the porthole of the sky, you can discern the barely perceptible movements of your creator. At night, God arranged the stars into a particular order, and if you can decode them, they spell out, "Never give up, bro, I'm right here." Astrology, the watching of stars, stopped being an official science surprisingly late, because it originally leaned on Aristotle, a badly read Aristotle mind you, and it rested on the ideas that everything happening on the earth is, one way or another, written by God in the sky. You can literally read that is going to happen, so the signal prepares the signal quest of the person who born into the Middle Age is this: wander the firmament beneath the dome and save your soul from the hell with everything. Your God is watching you constantly. You can literally see him in the night. Just lift your head. Meanwhile, society was clear-based. People are bound by corporate ethic, and the key concept in any hierarchy were reliability, loyalty, and fidelity. Like something out of LinkedIn profile, where the gently complex moral dilemmas: my liege has committed a sin, must I kill him as a sinner, or must I become a sinner myself, staining my own soul, but remain loyal to my liege? Mostly people traveled the firmament on foot. Ordinary people, that is. It was the great epoch of the pedestrian. Horses were a rarity, were not even counting, and walking had its own metaphysics. Wayfarer walked silently onward, conveying hundreds of kilometers. A web of footprints covered the surface of Europe. The thousands of pilgrims floated them like ants. Distance between cities were measured in days of travel. A day's travel being 20, 30, 40 kilometers. 30 kilometers along with the road. The relationships between a wayfarer and his road is an intensely intimate things, and it's a poetically woven into Christianity. The wandering of the soul, the pilgrims to holy place. In this world you are a only ghostly passenger. You are a wayfarer, a pilgrim, a Samaritan. Your world is the road disappearing beneath your feet, and the true reality, the place you are walking towards, await you after death, provided, of course, you're on the right path. Augustine said, the well-known theory is that the salvation of the soul matters more than prosperity on this sinful earth. From the Confessions, I believe. Space was measured in wayfarers, in days en route along the firmament. If on a monotonic stretch of road you pass a lonely village and you look at the cottage window and the girl waves her handkerchief at you, that was an event. That's a locus. You will remember it. That is how the ordinary medieval person lived on the veldt, in space, roads, and low sea. And what about time in that world? Peasants, obviously, went out into the fields and worked to their own natural rhythmics. Nobody interfered with those, but officially state time certainly exists, and it was kept in the church. In church, time was kept beautiful, calibrated, ceremonial. The yearly facts, the daily prayers, scheduled by the book of hours. A priest's life was scripted almost to the minutes. The Lord turned the priest into a living clock. The priest moves. He is a conductor of time, possessed by rhythm. He lives by the book of hours and moves like a marionette. His arms like a hand of a clock. So, God and time, how are they connected? It was a great scholastic question. Augustine wrote a lot about time. He's my favorite philosopher of this era. And every day Augustine understands perfectly well what time means. He talks about it without thinking, like in other things in the world. But the moment he tried to think what time is it, he starts losing his mind. A little Heidegger vibe there, yes? And Augustine arrives at the conclusion that time is the process of the world creation. He had a lot of genuinely psychedelic bits about time actually. Maybe I will make a separate video about it. But for now, let's settle on this. Time is the creation of the world happening in the real time. Time is a God creation. This present moment, the one we are in right now, is being created by God right now. Second by second, frame by frame, time is crude. Time is the will of God. Time, you could even say, is God, and that is why the church seized the total monopoly of the time in the states. Power over time is total power. For a medieval person, imagining life without the church is simply impossible. The church is too woven into the everyday, too convenient. It performs administrative function too. It's like the latest iPhone. You can't opt out anymore. It's already here. I thought in the 13th century, mechanical clocks begin to appear and the church losing its grip a little. When clocks arrived, time became slight private. And to me personally, as the philosopher, that moment seems like a turning point. Subscribe to the channel, hit like here too, so see you soon. Hug you all.